Let's get straight to the panel now. Joining me is Christy McSweeney, Managing Director of PR Council, and Radio 2CC host Stephen Cenatiempo. Hello to you both. Good to be with you. Thanks for joining us.
Hi, Danica.
Let's get straight into it because we've seen these new figures out today showing that the Yes campaign spent, would you believe, $44 million on last year's Voice referendum, almost double the amount spent by the two leading No groups. The ANZ, Commonwealth Bank, Westpac and BHP donated around $2 million each. Christy, it's the usual virtue signalling on full display right here. Why does big business feel the need to stick its nose into every campaign going around?
Look, I don't know, Danica. As you know, I'm from the aviation industry. I spent many years at Qantas and Air New Zealand and have worked with corporates most of my life. Interestingly, these corporate organisations have donated through their foundations. I don't know why, maybe to make it a bit less obvious, or maybe so they could put it in their CSR and ESG reports. But at the end of the day, it's very, very clear the majority of Australians did not support this confused model of constitutional change that was put in front of them, which means the majority of shareholders in those major companies and the majority of people in industry super funds who have their retirement savings invested in those companies did not support this agenda. And the Australian Shareholders Association and many other financial services institutions have been very quiet on that.
Yeah, I wonder why. How convenient, right? And Stephen, if we look at this, Woolworths also chipped in over $1 million. They can afford it, right? They're making some good profits right now, but not the best look in the middle of a cost of living crisis.
No, but if you look through the list of those companies, I think most of them were probably using this as a greasing the wheels exercise, keeping certain sections of the community happy by donating to the Yes case. At the end of the day, I don't know that it's going to cost them that much skin with the no, those that voted no, which was the majority of us. But there are certain vested interest groups across the community that will see this as, you call it virtue signalling, I think they would have called it a cost of doing business and an opportunity to keep certain groups happy. So I understand why they've done it. A hell of a lot of money, though, that at the end went down the drain.
Yeah, $44 million. It's an eye-watering figure, that's for sure. Now, misbehaving politicians could be docked up to 5% of their salary under a new code of conduct. Christy, I've got to say, some of our pollies would be taking home nothing based on their behaviour. Do you think this is good policy?
I think it's a hip pocket response and there needs to be some sort of response. I'm making light of that, but of course, very, very serious issues. This is in response to the Jenkins report. I've been in and out of Parliament House. I first went there 20 years ago this year, actually, was my first job at Parliament House in Canberra, and it has changed remarkably in terms of what's acceptable workplace standards. I wish there was some sort of threat hanging over the head of some people that engaged in behaviour with me, and maybe this is what it takes. And we know politicians get paid more if they chair committees or a deputy chair of committees. And I noticed that with the leak today in the 9 papers, it says that they will be suspended from committees if they're found to have engaged in abusive workplace behaviour. But who adjudicates? That's going to be the next issue on how this comes to light.
Yeah, that's a very good question. Stephen, do you agree? Do you think that this will actually make politicians stop and think before they act?
If it's structured right, yes, and I think it's about time our politicians had some skin in the game. I mean, elsewhere in the community, we've got to cop it on the chin if we do something wrong. People in this building have got to start to be held accountable. I don't think 5% is enough to start with. I think there should be more than that, and I'd like to see it expanded out to bad policy as well. But it comes down to who's actually going to administer it, and as you say, if it's going to be somebody independent looking in from the outside and treating everybody equally, then I think it's a brilliant idea. But if it's going to be used to score political points, which I have a real suspicion that it will, then it will become a double-edged sword and then it becomes a problem. But in principle, great idea.
Yeah, well, there needs to be some level of transparency, as you both have alluded to. Now, Till MP and climate campaigner Zali Steggall has hit out at the PM and Chris Bowen for using 2 planes to attend the same clean energy event in the New South Wales Hunter Valley last week. The irony in that statement is incredible. But here she was on Sunrise today.
Considering they're going to a solar announcement that's all about reducing emissions, I certainly hope they were at least offsetting the emissions of those 2 jets with companies, you know, like Greenfleet and other places like that, where you can offset the emissions of your travel. So I certainly hope, and I call on the Minister for Climate Change to do that.
Stephen, this is an absolute mess. It's a shocking look. Chris Bowen claims, well, no, it was the RAAF's decision, but they got this one really wrong, didn't they?
Christy and I actually discussed this morning, and I know the Hunter Valley better than most. I spent a lot of my broadcasting career up there, and the reality is that this was an absolute shocking display of waste. Now, firstly, the Prime Minister's jet, as I understand it, carries 30 passengers. I don't know why you'd need 30 people there, but these 2 jets they flew hold 14 passengers each. Now, at best, I can only imagine that they needed 10 people to fly to this thing. Now, if they had flown commercially, and the drive from Williamtown Airport to Liddell Power Station's about an hour and 10 minutes, from Scone Airport's about 45 minutes. So they saved about 25 minutes and cost us an absolute fortune. Now, Zali Steggall can go on about emissions and all of that kind of stuff, but it's just the absolute waste of our money that's the real problem.
Well, apparently this has cost over $100,000 to the taxpayer. And if you look a quick Google search of those 2 jets, they can take 14 passengers each. So that's 28 passengers. What an absolute waste of money. It's ridiculous. Christy, and how hypocritical of Labor. They lecture us about carbon emissions. They go on and on about green energy, yet they fly in 2 gas guzzlers to the same event.
Well, how many Labor MPs and public servants does it take to fly to coal mining country to tell them you're going to shut them down? It's the irony of this is incredible, and you can pick it apart in so many ways. Yes, it was an environmental announcement. Yes, they could have flown commercial. Yes, they were scared not to go without a contingent of 27 staff plus the 2 ministers, that's 29, and a significant crew as well. It is an absolute disgrace. And I can tell you what, when I was a ministerial advisor to senior cabinet ministers, we were actively discouraged from flying on prime ministerial jets unless we were needing to. Ministers only took 2 advisors, 1 if they could get away with it, and we flew economy instead of business, even though we were entitled to under our entitlement provisions. There is a lot of lack of transparency going on with this, and blaming the public service, blaming the Defence Department. Labor's in enough trouble with the Department of Defence at the moment. I wouldn't be doing that if I was them.
Yeah, exactly. Spot on.
And I can guarantee they didn't catch a bus from Scone down the New England Highway either.
Oh, of course not. When they would have gotten a com car, and that just raises another question. Where did the com car come from? Has it come from Canberra? Has it come from Sydney? I mean, there's so many unanswered questions here. It's just absolutely ridiculous. Now, I want to talk about the cost of living because this new report has found that credit card spending has hit an all-time high, with reports today that 2 million Australians increased their credit card limit in the past year alone. Stephen, we know that Aussies are really struggling at the moment. And here is more proof. What are you expecting from the budget next month? Do you think there'll be any reprieve?
Well, look, I don't really think so. I don't think the government... Well, I guess they're on a hiding to nothing here. They need to try and win back some support, which they're losing left, right and centre. But they can't afford to be throwing money out hand over fist either. I mean, because the reality is that government spending is one of the largest drivers of inflation, which is causing the cost of living crisis. So it's a real fine balancing act, and I don't know that this government is up to it.
No, I completely agree. Christy, we know that Labor's in a world of trouble when it comes to its failure to address the cost of living crisis, and here is more proof.
Well, the Treasurer is in a world of failure as well. The Treasurer, by all accounts and personal accounts, is quite economically responsible, and he's fighting the left of Labor and the dominant faction within the Cabinet to increase spending on things such as wage increases and other benefits payments. And he's saying, I can't do that. Now, I don't think there's going to be any relief in the budget either on cost of living. The government's been firm, the Treasurer's been firm. That $15 a week is all people are going to get. And that's really, really disappointing for Australians, particularly as they've all been expecting $275 off their power bill.
Yeah, we're still waiting for that 275, aren't we? Now, the Victorian government is fighting to keep hundreds of documents from Daniel Andrews' time in office secret, including paperwork related to the bungled hotel quarantine program. Here's Jacinta Allen this morning.
I am not aware of the specific circumstances behind these set of documents because clearly they are not my documents. They are documents that go to a previous time.
Christy, this is unbelievable. After what Victorians went through during the world's longest lockdown, they have a right to know what was going on behind the scenes.
Well, Danica, Stephen, you're talking to a woman who's locked in a very small apartment with a small chihuahua, being told I had to be inside by 8 p.m. So the lack of transparency from the Victorian government on this, and anybody who knows anything about parliamentary procedures and about the continuity of government knows that just because the Premier's changed, documents relating to the office of the Premier have not changed hands. The responsibility and the chain of responsibility lies with the office, not the office holder. And if the Victorian government thinks that Victorians are going to cop this lie, it is absolutely an indication that they have lost all regard for even pretending to spin a good lie.
Yeah, spot on. I mean, every Victorian should be outraged that there's not enough transparency with this. It's appalling. Now, I can't let you go without mentioning the Royals, because a royal commentator is predicting that William won't attend Harry's Invictus Games if the UK wins a bid to host this event. Stephen, I mean, you can understand why. Seriously, what Harry's done to the family, why would he want to go and support his estranged brother?
Look, the only reason I can think that he might do it is that he's a military man himself, and this is the only good thing Harry's done in the last 10 years. So maybe he goes out and supports the one good thing that his brother's done. But look, I can't see anybody from the royal family attending the Invictus Games or anything else to do with Harry and Meghan. The Duke and Duchess of Santa Barbara have made their own bed and they've got to lie in it.
That's it. They're too busy in Santa Barbara now, aren't they? Releasing a new brand, or Meghan was. Anyway, yeah. Sounds like a shocking endeavour to me. Krista McSweeney, Stephen Cenatiempo, good to speak with you. Thanks for joining us on the program this evening.